Welcome to Nonprofit Network, powered by Stokes Auction Group. We are a podcast focused on benefit auctions and fundraising events for the nonprofit community. We are a group of fundraising professionals that specialize in raising funds to improve communities of all sizes. And here it is, episode 5. My name is Shelby Stokes, and on our cast today we have Kelly Shinfield.
Kelly Shinfield.
And Paul Shinfield is also here.
Hey, everybody.
What's
Thanks
going
for joining
on?
us
That's
again.
right.
Five.
Thank
We've
you.
done 5. We're doing 5. This is 5.
This is number 5.
Very
Time's
impressive.
flying by.
I know, it is. So, we picked a pretty cool background. Paul inspired us to choose this background because this is a futuristic spaceship.
That is the James Webb Telescope that NASA launched back in December.
Love it.
Yeah, and it's going to be the most accurate, deep-looking telescope ever put into space.
Yeah.
It's
And
1 million miles away from Earth on the opposite side of the sun, and it operates in negative temperatures in order for its instruments to work properly. So it's going to take 6 months for it to get down to that temperature, and then it's going to have some amazing photos. So it's a really cool current thing.
Is the sun your favorite planet, Paul?
my favorite planet's the sun.
My favorite planet's the sun.
It powers my telescope.
It powers the telescope.
So it's at a negative temperature and has to warm up. Like, that
Yeah.
doesn't seem right. Normally you have to wait for the electrons to cool down, not in this
Yeah.
case, huh?
You actually, it needs to cool down to get below negative.
You're so
minus
smart.
degrees. No, I just like telescopes.
Someone's
I
a
just like to
Nova
read.
nerd.
Hey!
Someone's a
I like to read. Anyway, okay, so
Someone
on a serious note.
On a serious note, today is March 2nd of 2022, and fundraising is underway. We said that last week. We're saying it again this week. But, if you did not catch last week's episode, we covered some expectations, what to do coming out of this pandemic in the post-pandemic fundraising space, what to look for in regard to throwing a fundraiser, more of a party than maybe a traditional fundraiser may look, and also reacclimating to the world that we're in. So we covered some pretty good stuff last week.
We did. We've covered a lot of good stuff these first 4 episodes.
Yeah.
Actually, kind of 5 if you watch 0.
Zero's out there, too.
So 0's out there, too.
So this was 5. So if you want to go back and watch that, feel free to do so. So where were we at this last week? How are you since we talked last, Miss Shinfield?
I am good. Mark and I traveled this week, and Shelby knows that because we were 1/3 of a new idea of having 3 chapters basically have one night, but they were in 3 different cities in the same state. It was really
Same state, three different cities. Okay,
3 different
cool.
cities, and it worked well. And that kind of caveats us into our kind of topic-ish today, or the beginning of it.
Definitely. So, in regard to this last week, like Kelly was saying, 3 cities, 1 state, and in some of the details within the fundraiser before we move on, is they had all of the traditionally silent items, right? So what you would bid during the cocktail hour, all 3 galas were connected to one database, which is something we haven't seen before.
No, and it was really, the whole silent auction was all the same. The thing that was unique, too, is that all the live items were on the mobile device. So, like, our room sold 4, your room sold...
We had 4 in our room.
You had 4,
yep.
and then I think Kingsbury had 8.
6, I want to say, yeah.
But all of them were on the mobile device. So it kind of was connecting people that weren't together and yet seeing how things were going. You can't bid on those live items, obviously, in the live auction, but you can in the silent. But they all knew what each other's items were.
Yeah, and
So
furthermore,
it was really unique.
and we also did a raffle where we basically sold tickets to all 3 galas, and then they drew 1 ticket between the 3, and then we announced what room that person was drawn in.
It was really
So
cool.
it was really an interesting event, and we were actually working with 2 pretty prominent software companies, One Cause and Greater Giving, and this was the first time they had done anything like this. So we had not heard anything of this nature happening on record. I want to say it's probably one of the better blends of what we learned from the pandemic on a live event that we've seen to date, personally.
Yeah. It really had the need for strong communication.
Yes.
It really had the need for strong communication, and it taught me personally how we could have navigated through that maybe easier for us, or in a room. It just brought up in my mind, oh my gosh, we just talked about expectations. We got to, you got to communicate those things to people, or,
You need to
and
communicate your expectations to people
Right.
in a clear, concise way.
And
Right.
because you keep saying the C word, that is our topic this week, is communication, right? So we started talking about what does communication mean. It can be a very broad comment or a very specific comment. But I think the reason it fits into what we're talking about today is how things have changed coming out of the pandemic and how communication styles have really evolved very quickly in the last 3 years. Like we saw specifics in the ballroom that we'll share, but also a general communication with people and donors right now is much different than it was in the
Yeah,
past.
because, face-to-face communications changed because we were all locked down.
right.
You had to make use of other methods of communication, right?
Which could have done, and here's where they may disagree with me, and that's okay. That's why we are such good friends and family. But I think the communication, we have gotten lazy, to be honest with you, moving into the charity world. And I think the pandemic may have done that to us, in that we're used to Zooms, we're used to emails, we're used to text and things like that. And maybe moving forward, we have to make sure that that is how those people we're communicating with communicate well, and they did in the pandemic, but maybe moving forward, it's different. We can't assume it's the same.
Yeah, I mean, and I think what we're finding is communication styles have...
Zoom
is so a thing.
So a thing.
I mean, communication has changed so much, right? I mean, we were getting together in person. That's where we were connecting. Then we were all on computers, sitting behind desktops, and now we're going back in ballroom, and it feels a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, and you can't go in the ballroom just wearing the top of your dress like we did on Zoom.
No, you cannot.
If I just went in with no skirt, and Mark went with just a tuxedo shirt and a coat, we could go to jail.
I mean, yeah, you don't wear your swimsuit bottoms to a gala.
shouldn't.
Just saying.
Did you guys feel...
But what an idea! Have a gala where you're pretending you're at a Zoom, but you got to wear
That's actually a good idea.
a swimsuit, not underwear. But
That's a good theme.
Bottomless gala 2022.
bottomless gala! Ah! Yes!
And then it's an all-you-can-eat buffet,
all you can-
and the drinks are bottomless, so you could really go with this team.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's what
guys!
thing, right?
It's so great. But you
What
would
a
have to
theme.
put a precursor in there. Please do cover.
That's right.
Appropriate.
Well, yeah, fig leaf.
Communicate well, right? So like going back to this...
So great. I love it.
So going back to this weekend, like the communication style of like log on and give to an event is kind of been adopted and moved into the ballroom, especially in this last weekend, where we had everybody bid on their phones and communicate
Yep.
with the organization that way. There was also people donating to the cause remotely, purely. So, I mean, that's one communication style. But those individuals that were in the room, what I found was that everyone wanted to talk face to
I was
face.
just going to ask you, did it feel weird when everybody got together? It's like, I just want to talk to people.
It did.
Finally, face to face.
It's tough to slow your room down and get them locked into
Yeah.
the auction. That's the
Gotcha.
only difference, which you can use that for good.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I walked away with in regard to my experience this last weekend is some fundraising ballrooms, right, and charity auctions, charity events. They have been around for years, and there's many individuals that go to similar fundraising auctions over the course of the year. Well, what I witnessed this weekend was that my participants were not ready for the auction.
Right.
Whereas in other rooms, in other years, I would walk in, everybody knew the drill, and they were ready to throw their hands in the air and start bidding. This night
Yeah.
was a little bit more walking up of the items, a little bit more, down to basics, 200 now 3, not a heavy auctioneer chant within those different items. So I found that we need to just go back to basics, start slow, and work up with lower increments, not higher increments.
So yeah, you felt like people were like, it's been 2 years since I've been to an auction. I remember.
Yeah.
Right, because you're coming out of the gate. Who give 500 asking
Yeah.
6 and you get no hands in the air.
That's exactly
You're like,
right.
Oh,
What was that
okay.
you were saying at lunch? You were saying something about, having to get the attention of the crowd, communicating as the auctioneer to your crowd about, we're
Yeah, I remember this has happened several times, but they introduce the auctioneer, and here you go, and they introduce item number one, and I go, all right, who'll give $1,000? Asking $1,250. Nobody.
Yeah.
And I'll go 12 and a half, 12 and a half, and I'll just stop and I'll say, hey, ladies and gentlemen, the auction has started. You are welcome to start bidding anytime.
Yeah.
And everybody laughs,
Right.
And then they're like, oh, okay, I got it. And I'll give them a mercy bid.
But you communicated that.
Yeah, it's good.
You
Good
know,
point.
you did. You communicated that, hey, I'm here and I'm doing this. And you did the same thing by slowing down and saying that. I think that something that we could do differently, possibly outside, moving forward since the pandemic, is a lot of people were really good at it prior to, but maybe have lost the, oh gosh, help me fellas, the drive to do it. But spend a lot of time welcoming your guests. If you're the auctioneer, if you're the ringman, or if you're the chair, or if you're a volunteer, you know what? Spend more time just walking around the silent area, knowing that they're on their phones and they're just sipping cocktails now, so it's a visiting time. And go introduce yourself. And I love name tags. So I know these boys, well, Paul likes them. I'm not saying name tags for us. I'm saying when they come in, here's an idea. You know what? You put a name tag on somebody and you say it's Billy Bob with,
Name tags
whatever.
are so lame.
They are, but wait, listen. And you tell them, hey, anybody that carries this around or wants to be, we're just trying to get everybody to know each other again.
Feel like
I'm not done talking.
What am I supposed
to say?
to
And then they can have a $500 drawing or something at the end of the night.
For people that have a name tag?
Yes.
Okay. So you work in the name tag to a drawing. I like that.
Yes.
But it's also like a door prize.
No, because the idea is to get their name tag. The idea is to, Bill, I recognized you, but I couldn't remember your name. That's right, I'm Kelly. A lot of that.
But I mean, so that's my favorite part of not having the name tag is like, hi, my name is, and then conversation starts.
Not everybody will do that, Shelby.
Not everybody will share their name. What's your name? Can't tell you.
No, but people, if they have a name tag on, listen here, if people have a name tag on and you make it a game of some sort or a raffle,
Have you ever been at a restaurant and you're like, how are you doing? Jamie? You know what I mean? Like,
it would only be your awkwardness that would create that, Shelby. So,
right?
I don't have
blatantly
a problem saying
looking
hello to
at
people.
the name tag. Yeah.
Like when our kids got married, we went around to everybody at the wedding and said, thank you for coming.
So that's what I want to talk about a little bit, right? So you're going back into the ballroom and you're focusing on the communication, right? When you go back in, what we're really finding is that the reconnection with your guests is really going to go a long way.
Agreed.
After 2 years of being shut down, whether they have a name tag on or not, they want to have a conversation. Mm-hmm. They want to socially interact with you at that gala. So whether you be a organization staff member or involved in any way, have those conversations. Because what I found this last weekend is people are willing to talk.
Yeah.
Before you'd say, how you doing? And the answer would be good. Now it's like, how you doing? Oh, great. The weather this morning was and traffic was this and traffic was that. And before you know it, you're in a 20-minute conversation with somebody you've never met before. But one thing that I kind of want to circle back on in communication is within my fundraising event this last weekend, we had a lot of new faces in our room. So and by new faces, I mean new contacts that had not been to a fundraising event like this before in the past, right?
That's why name tags would have
That's why they did. I see what you did there. And I don't like it. If you're watching the video version, you can see the smile on Kelly's face. If not,
just keep going.
Yeah, so communication, right? So new faces, connecting with those new people. We had multiple individuals that were new to the organization give at the top fundraising levels. Yeah, and then we had legacy families who did not come through. And by legacy, I mean they've been coming to the gala for years, given for years. They did not give this year. So by having that communication with that new family member,
Agreed.
The potential of raising money with new individuals grows exponentially. So have that conversation with people.
Yeah, and that conversation is not just an email without a response. Agreed?
Agreed.
Yeah. And I think that's another part of the conversation here as well, is as we're coming back, what we're finding is that we have individuals who have helped us with fundraising events in the past, and we've been reminded that we used to run everything off of email, but maybe email isn't the best way to communicate with your team members that you don't work with on the daily basis, or organizations or customers that you're working with. You got to find a way to connect with these individuals.
Yeah.
Email can be overwhelming for some. I know when I'm building a schedule for my team and looking 3 months in advance, I'm normally sending text message to those individuals to make sure they're available, unless there's somebody that I'm not that close with. Then I'm normally routing them through email. And then if I don't hear a response from that email after a couple of weeks, I got to figure out if they're available or not, so I'm sending a text message or a call, right?
And I think it's okay to ask people what their best form of communication is, and then you could put that into your database or your list. I'm a list person, so if you say, hey, do you prefer to communicate by text, email? Would you rather me call? What works for you?
Sure.
And they'll tell you, and then boom, that opens that up too. But you have to be able to share that information back and forth.
Right, exactly right. Yeah, and I think the example that comes to mind is somebody who has changed positions. So the individual that example that comes to mind for me is somebody that we used to work with very intimately and communicate via email. That individual has gone on to do different things. Mm-hmm. But if you think about it, everyone is doing something different.
Everybody.
Like your schedule today is different than it was 3 years ago, no matter what. So for a lot of people, that communication style will have probably changed. Let's talk about text messages for a second. I feel
Text is good.
Text is good, but it has no inflection.
Right? It's easily misinterpreted.
True. Written
That
word.
has been my experience. It not all the time, but it usually happens in most critical situations when the interpretation is lost on the recipient. Right? That's not what I meant to say, or they would say the same thing back to me. Well, that's not what I meant. That's why I think it's kind of dangerous to rely solely on that type of communication with that fear in mind that this could be misinterpreted.
I think email's the same way too. I think email can be that way as well. That people are going to put their lens at whatever they're going through at that moment on that text or email that you're leaving, right? Mm-hmm. So it's important to remember that. Like I could say to you in a text, "Wow, that's crazy," or "Wow, that is crazy."
You can't relay that inflection through a text.
Right.
I think that's kind of dangerous, and depending on how important the information you're trying to convey is, especially between an auction chair and an auctioneer or an MC. I mean, these are critical moments where communication cannot be lost.
Right.
Because the essence of the point you're trying to make could be lost, and we might not perform the way that you intended us to.
Yeah.
Because your email or your text was misinterpreted.
And step outside of yourself when you're reading a text or delivering a text, and remember who you're sending it to or reading it from.
Yeah.
And what they're possibly going through.
Yeah, I think it's also worth mentioning, and we all know this, or at least I have come to know this, is that text messages are not nearly as taboo for the professional than they were 5 years ago, it feels like, right? I mean, back in the day, you'd only text your friends, you only text your family. Now what we're seeing is that professionally, you're seeing a lot of people move towards that text message device. Some organizations have been doing it for years. Others are a little bit more hesitant, right? So that text message is beneficial for the interpersonal communication, but also, if you take a look at the gala we did this last weekend, we no longer had to make announcements that things were closing because they were sending out text notifications to every individual in that room. Rather than us saying, hey, it closes in 5 minutes, they were getting messages that says, hey, it closes in 5 minutes. So all of a sudden, that text message that used to be taboo is now at the forefront.
Yeah.
And a very, very handy tool, especially in that environment.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I still think the auctioneer or ringman or whoever should interject themselves or insert themselves into that time during the silent or that time that it's happening. I still think whether it's encouraged by the chair or not, I think that you should communicate with the guests that are there about so that they're used to hearing your voice, because then all of a sudden they're just going to hear your voice up there during the live. And I think it's important to get the warm and fuzzy started. And hey, don't forget to check your phones. And oh my goodness, did you guys see how crazy the golf bag is going or whatever, and just so I think that's something to remember too.
Properly placed texts
Yeah.
Informational reasons, silence closing, yes. If you're going to ask the Joneses for a $10,000 donation,
No.
don't send them a text. That requires a phone call or lunch,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And a really good bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I mean, you gotta get creative nowadays. You gotta get creative, even for those donors that maybe are kind of ghosting you. Well, I sent them 6 emails and they're not responding to me. Call them, text them, make sure you get a no, because there's a good chance it's just going unanswered. Like, you quit Facebook like
I did.
4 months ago or
I
whatever,
quit
right?
Facebook 4 months ago until we started this podcast.
Let's just play it out, right? If somebody sent you, like, your long lost cousin sends you a message on Facebook and you're not on Facebook or it's deactivated, you're not going to see it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not you being like, well, I'm just going to ignore this person because this person is it's just you haven't seen it. And with so many different ways of communication, we mentioned call, we mentioned text, we mentioned email. We're not even getting into social media
Instagram,
platforms, Discord. I have a gaming Discord for the other podcast that I'm on. Like, there are so many different ways of communication that you can't take offense when you're not getting a response.
You're right.
It's a really good point.
It's a very good point.
Yeah.
And, I know that we got to wind it down, but I'll give you an example of just misreading something. Is that I had a cousin. She's so perfect. I just love her so much. And she forwarded something, and it started with, "This goes out for my mom." And I automatically think all she did was forwarded something from a friend of hers that she loved, and I think my aunt is sick.
Oh, no.
So I go into Mark's office, and I'm like, oh, my God, something's wrong. What are we going to do? And he's like, so I just text her. And I said, hey, is everything all right with your mom? She's like, oh, shucks, yeah, gosh. Later on, I see that my aunt posts on there, hey, everybody, sorry about the confusion. So, that is a perfect example that I think, okay, the wheels are falling off of the bus, and my family,
The younger generation doesn't have our problems.
they
Kelly.
don't have our problems.
They know how to manipulate
They
them.
do.
And soon we're just going to communicate in emojis, right? It's just going to be...
Yeah, right. Thumbs up, teardrop, ooh face. I don't know.
WTF.
What does any of that mean?
Oh,
It means
Sarah
my
just got
lasagna
back
didn't
from the
turn out.
store. Yeah, exactly. Something super obscure. Oh, that's hilarious. Well, we're going to start winding this down. Thank you so much for being with us this week. If you want more, you can follow us on Facebook. There's a video version of this cast on our YouTube page. If you'd like to watch it there, please do so. If you are watching it there, please subscribe, like, and comment on the video if you'd be so kind. Or if you'd rather send us an email, you can do that. Our email address is auction@stokesauctiongroup.com.
But remember, if we don't answer the email, it isn't a communication. So text us if you need
Just
to.
text us. Yeah. Shoot us a text. And if you are listening to this on a podcatcher, please leave us a review. We appreciate all that we get. We appreciate you for joining us this week.
Go out and be bold, everybody.
Be healthy.
And go do good.
Thanks, everybody.
Good.